Welcome to the Strong for Life podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Shea, and I really appreciate you tuning in. If you are enjoying these episodes, I'd really appreciate you taking a moment and rating it 5 stars on Spotify or on Apple or whatever podcast platform you use. This is going to allow more people to find this information. Without further ado, let's jump into today's show. All right, folks. So this week on the podcast, myself and Brad are going to deep dive into protein a bit more. And this is a question that comes up a ton with our clients, and there's a lot of confusion around it. So we thought we would just kind of chat a bit more about it, the benefits of it, how to actually get it into your diet, why we really get people to focus on having more protein, and any, other common questions and kind of where it leads to as well. And a big thing that we try and focus on in the program is like, what are the big kind of dominoes that we can help people with that are going to give them the best return? And protein is definitely one of them. So you find this comes up a lot for people, Brad, these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Often about the amount. How much should I get? What's the maximum I should get? What's the minimum I need? And also, how the hell do I get it all in? I think that's where do I how often do I need to eat? What should I be eating? So yeah, it can become quite a concern until you find out, strategies to improve it.
Yeah, and I think it's something that pretty much everyone know. I know there is a little bit of confusion. Like, I can't remember the guy's name, but like I think he's a functional medical doctor. He released a protein video recently, and he was saying that you don't need more than 40 or 50 grams of protein a day, or maybe even 20 grams. It was like really low, and it was just like from plant-based sources. And he would be a very, a huge influencer. His information is generally really good, but like those recommendations go against all of the clinical research around the benefits of protein. So it can be really confusing because you have a lot of people saying you don't need protein really, and if you do, you can get it from just plant sources. And then you have people who are generally more of the like evidence-based practitioners who are saying, yeah, you should be focusing on animal sources from an absorbability point of view, and much more than those recommendations. But before we kind of jump into the specifics, man, maybe do you want to talk about some of the benefits? Like, why should people up protein in their diet?
Okay, well, because it'll get you really buff. That's one of the first parts. Yeah. Now, if you're working out, it's going to be like a hugely important component for building muscle and for giving you the strength in your workouts. So that's like a huge thing. Training on a low protein diet, strength training in particular, is quite a challenge. So yeah, that's a huge benefit. It also helps to reduce appetite by keeping you feeling full for longer. So if you have a nice bit of lean, healthy protein, that's going to really satiate your appetite, which means that you're going to be eating less, so you can help either with weight loss or weight maintenance. And yeah, I think there's a big thing about needing protein to aid recovery, which is like not just from session to session, but also coming back from injuries. And then probably a huge one, definitely, that I felt like in my life, if you get protein in for, say, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when it comes to the nighttime when you're watching the telly or something like that, you don't have quite the same cravings for those late night comfort nibbles.
Yeah. For sure, man. Like it's an interesting one. Like if I wake up and I have toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, and then like a kind of a real carby meal, like I'm really craving snacks throughout the day versus like having about 6 or 8 eggs for breakfast, and then like a steak for lunch, and then dinner. Like I'm just so satisfied with if I have another like high protein meal. So just the difference is night and day. Like if you up your kind of protein and fat intake, you generally feel much more satiated. And a lot of people struggle with cravings because their blood sugar is going up and down if you're having a lot of, you know, refined carbohydrates, a lot of kind of sugary stuff. You're going to get that sugar high, but then you crash, you get hungry again, your energy's low. And as a result of that, you're always kind of in this cycle of wanting to snack more and never really feeling satisfied. So again, it's one of these domino effects. It really has a positive cascading impact. And then like a really big thing that you don't hear a lot about is the, you know, muscle mass and strength is important, and people hear that and they think of bodybuilding, but we like to talk about it from through the lens of like longevity. So if you think about your ability to stay independent as you age is largely determined by how strong and mobile you are. And if you're in your 30s or 40s, your diet is rubbish, you're not doing any training, the chances of you starting to drop below the into a disability threshold as you get, you know, 65 and above, your risk of falling and getting injured, breaking a hip, something like that, goes up exponentially. So like if you can start focusing on strength training now and actual just moving your body up and down off the ground, and upping your protein levels in your diet, you're going to be much more able-bodied later into your life, which is just so important. Because if you start having to rely on people 60, 65, 70, you know, it's just a downward spiral very quickly, because once you become disabled or very much dependent on other people, that's going to have a huge knock-on effect as well on your mental health. Once your legs aren't working, you're no longer being able to socialize with people, meet people, you're constantly relying on people, which means that you need to have family around you. Most likely, if you don't have that, then you're in a serious issue. So this is stuff you can get ahead of now. That's just going to save you a lot of long-term pain as you get older in life as well. So strength and muscle mass is super important.
You mentioned having a big egg breakfast. Have you ever had steak and eggs for breakfast?
Yeah, it's great. Like I don't like to eat much. I have a kind of like a 10, 11 or 12 o'clock. I'll normally eat something. But yeah, steak and eggs is great. What about you?
Yeah, I always thought it was madness to have steak and eggs as your first meal in the day until I had it. And I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah,
What a meal. Put a little bit of
you're not
English mustard
hungry.
on the side. Yeah, happy days.
What's the South African staple? Like what's normal to eat in South Africa?
I mean, South Africa is there's a lot of red meat for sure. Um, it's quite nice here. We get ostrich is readily available, so and that's a much leaner red meat than say beef, and obviously not as harsh environmentally on a kind of farming sustainability level. But yeah, it's really good, high protein, low fat, very lean and tasty. So you can also quite get a lot of game meat, like it's kind of a whole variety of different antelope, really, is what they are. Which is what
Nice,
made
mate.
my mother go vegetarian. She went on a safari, and then she said she couldn't. When they were in the restaurant at the end, she couldn't eat what she had just seen frolicking in the felt.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, just we're very disconnected from food. Like, even though that's what happens to, like, there used to be animals and then we eat them. That's that's part of it, right? Do you is ostrich, is it poultry or meat? I'm guessing
Yeah,
it's a
so
type of
it's
poultry,
red
is it?
meat. Well, I mean,
Oh
it's got to be.
wow.
I mean, it's a bird, obviously, but it's red meat. Yeah, classified as red meat.
Right. That's super interesting.
And looks it like,
So
so if you serve it, I mean, I've served it before to people and didn't tell them it was ostrich. And, like, so for instance, an ostrich mince, and did like a really nice kind of Mexican themed tacos style meal. And a lot of people just thought it was beef. So,
is it gamey?
by gamey, you mean kind of like sinewy and chewy?
Like it has that kind of wild taste, like venison would have that taste. I'm just thinking like in
Uh,
Australia, they have kangaroo, which is it's not nice. Like I had it a few times when I first got there because it was like the novelty, but it's not nice. But I'm
Okay.
curious about ostrich though. It sounds maybe tastier.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, so I had springbok the other day, which is kind of
Mm.
sacrilege this close to a Rugby World Cup to eat the springbok. But no, it was, I found it quite a gamey taste, whereas ostrich, not so much.
Cool. Okay, interesting. And then is it bintang? Is a big thing for you guys,
Biltong, yeah,
or
biltong is
biltang? Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, that's actually many
Yeah.
a vegetarian's kind of demise. So I used to be vegetarian, and then I came back to South Africa and had some biltong. So
Is that what happened? Is that the trigger?
bil yeah, biltong is it's like crack here. You can't say no to it.
That's so funny. Uh, what like actually what was the main reason maybe from switching? I think that's an interesting conversation. Like how long were you vegetarian for?
A good few years. So what happened was I used to work as a journalist for a newspaper, and I went into an abattoir and found it all quite severe. And that kind of led me to vegetarianism. And I was for, geez, I guess like 10 years, something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big change. And it was it ethical
Yeah.
reasons? So mostly because of that
Uh,
experience.
Yeah, which kind of makes me feel a little dubious sometimes now that as a meat eater again. Like I feel like my friend who is a vegan, um, and in part says he was inspired by my vegetarianism to go vegan. And now when we're eating together, I always make sure to order something vegetarian when I'm around him, even though he knows and says it's fine. He's not
Yeah,
judging me. But now I think definitely my body feels better eating
yeah.
meat.
Yeah,
And
that's an interesting.
it's yeah, I had a friend who was vegetarian for a long time, and she when she fell pregnant started eating meat again, and has continued to do so. uh like tries to be very kind of particular about the so more ostrich rather, so no beef for instance because of the environmental impact, but ostrich and other kind of venison. And yeah, so quite a few people I know have who were vegetarian and vegan have moved back to meat eating as they've gotten older because they felt like their body has needed it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's kind of like it's maybe from an ethical standpoint, it can be a nice thing, but like if your health is deteriorating, then it's probably time to make a shift. Also, I think it's just harder to get in protein. Like it just reminds me of a client that was in the program. It's back in 2020. Actually, I'm not going to mention her name, but she she got great results in the program, but she was like a lifelong vegetarian vegan. She had a pretty severe brain injury, and she was in her 60s when she came into the program. And then we looked at her actual protein levels; they were pretty much non-existent, and her overall calorie intake was very, very low because she was just eating plants. So we just literally focused on really, progressively upping her protein from plant sources because she had no interest in eating animal products. Um, and it was pretty astounding how much better she started to feel. Like
Mm.
her mental clarity, just her overall like physical health improved dramatically. Her recovery, her sleep. It's a real just low hanging fruit. So even from a point of view of even if you want to not eat animals, just be more conscious about getting in more protein and like you're going to feel better 100%. It's like the easiest thing. I think everyone kind of has heard this, but they, when they look at their diet, it's still very like carb heavy and they're a lot of times under protein. So let's kind of jump to that next phase of just giving people something very actionable. I'd like you to kind of go through. I can go through like the specifics, but I'd like you to just go through like maybe using someone's hand, how they can just simply look at, okay, this is roughly how much protein I should be having per meal.
Okay. Just quickly before, I just wanted to say, if ethical matters are a concern for you, there's like increasingly, obviously you pay a little bit more for it, but ethically sourced meats, they come from like much better. And you can see, if you're concerned, you can really do quite a lot of investigation. There's far more transparency and increasing number of suppliers who have sort of these ethical credentials. So something to consider. Yeah, when it comes to the protein serving, a good rule of hand is is to just look at your palm. So what's nice is you've always got your hands with you. So if you're preparing a meal, you can generally think like per serving for a woman, maybe one palm. So, and if you're a man, two palms. Usually
For
a
people,
good guide.
for people who are listening now, because my mother and your mother hasn't, she's stopped listening, but it's Karen. So we've got two listeners, and generally they listen to on the podcast. So can you just tell them what you've just after doing?
Yeah, so I forgot because I'm on a video call with Connor and I was speaking to Connor and holding my hands up as if Connor could see. I assumed that everyone else could see. But yeah, so if you look at your own hands and your palms, everyone should know what their palms are. That bit from the top of your
What,
wrist to the bottom of your fingers, that's your palm. But if you're a woman, you should aim for per meal, one palm of protein. So if you think like, maybe that's a kind of two chicken breasts, perhaps, depending on the size of the chicken
oh,
breast.
I was gonna say one. You're gonna have
Really?
a
Maybe
woman eating a lot of chicken out there.
I'm being served inferior sized chicken breasts at my local supermarket. And then for men, it would be two palms as a rough guide.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, super simple. So like just really focusing on, and it kind of equates to about 30 grams to kind of 50 or 60. So yeah, 25, 30 grams would be 1 palm, and then 50 to 60 would be 2 palms of protein. Now, to get a bit more clear, like from a number standpoint, Alan Aragon, he's like probably the world leading expert on nutrition. He's done a lot of the actual clinical research around protein, and he's just a body of knowledge, super super respected in the fitness industry. He's also a researcher and a coach, and he's been doing both of those things for like 25 years, maybe even more than that now. So he says once you start hitting about 1.5 to 1.6 times your body weight in grams of protein, good things start to happen from a health point of view. So just to make that really, really simple, let's just say you're 80 kilos. All right. So 80 kilos, 1.5 times 80 is 120. So if you're an 80-kilo guy, you're looking to get 120 grams of protein. Okay. So 120 grams of protein, again, to make that like, just so you can see it in your head, what that would be, you'd multiply that by about 4 or 5 to what like an amount of meat would be. So if we were to multiply that by 5 to get roughly like what that would be in chicken or beef, you're looking at about 600 grams of meat. Okay. So an 80-kilo guy, you're looking at eating about, let's just say, half a kilo to 600 grams of meat a day to hit your protein levels. Now, that's quite a lot of meat, probably a lot more than maybe you're currently eating. And we want to make it really clear that you don't need to go out today or tomorrow and just have 200 grams of meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I'm going to ask Brad like some recommendations for people. Like, it's a lot of meat. Some people say like it's expensive to eat that much. Maybe it's hard. It's also hard if you're not used to eating that much meat. So what are some kind of recommendations that we generally give to clients and how to think about this?
I mean, an obvious one is supplementing with a protein powder, usually like a whey. If you don't have any sort of lactose intolerance issues or you aren't vegan, then whey protein, this huge amount of research into whey protein, and it's like really, really good from an absorption point of view, from a digestibility point of view. Some people complain of troubled stomach, so that'll just be a case of you testing for yourself. But there are also great vegan protein powders out there that have a lot of the amino acids that are required. So yeah, that's an easy way to do it. Something like how that might work, you might have a protein smoothie for breakfast. So or whenever you break your fast, if you're an intermittent faster, you might do a kind of protein oats. So bowl of oats with a scoop or two of protein powder, that'll take you up to about, it's usually 20 grams of protein per serving of whey. So if you had to do 2 scoops, and with some oats, and depending on what you added, you could probably get up close to 50 grams of protein for your breakfast. And if you're looking at 120 grams of protein in your day, you're almost already halfway. Something like eggs are good protein sources. They're not the highest sort of economic ratio, because there's quite a lot of fat in that in an egg as well. Good fats, of course, but something to consider, like eating sort of 3 eggs would take you up to close to 20 grams of protein. So
Yeah.
if you think if you had to have 3 boiled eggs as a snack at some point in your day, and you've had that breakfast I just mentioned, you're already sort of 75 grams of protein. And then if you had to have something like chicken or steak for dinner, you're easily going to hit your targets.
Yeah, really good tips there, man. And like a lot of people we talked to as well, like, you know, it might be a guy and he's 80, 90, 100 kilos. And he's like, oh yeah, I had like a slice of toast and 2 eggs for breakfast. And it's a lot of times like you're not eating enough. You know, that's like 2 eggs is nothing. Like have like 4 to 6 eggs, and don't worry about your cholesterol. I always think it's really funny. Like people are like, oh, is you know, I don't want to eat too many eggs, or don't want to eat too much meat because I've heard it's bad for you. And it's like, well, whatever about that, like anything processed is going to be 1,000 times worse than whatever health problems are coming from those items. We've been eating eggs and meat for thousands of years. We haven't been eating, you know, protein cookies. You know, that's like created like 5 years ago. No one's asking about that stuff. So like, don't be worrying about this stuff. It's not going to affect your health long term. What is processed gunk and pollutants and all this kind of stuff. So that's where you should be putting your attention on, not about having an extra 1 or 2 eggs and how it's going to affect your cholesterol levels. And also
Sorry,
any sort of process.
No, sorry, you carry on.
Oh, I thought you were asking a question.
I was just going to talk
Okay.
about something like you know, not all animal proteins are the same kind of value. You know, you could have something like sliced sandwich ham is not going to be as good an option for you from a health point of view as, say, you know, a chicken breast or an ostrich steak or even a beef steak. So something to consider as well when you're talking about processed and, you know,
that's a great point, man. Like, so it's just, again, nutrition is super confusing, and you've got, you know, different camps telling you the exact opposite, which makes it even more confusing. And a lot of these people are, you know, PhDs and super switched on. They're telling you that you should be vegetarian or you should be eating more meat. But just bring it back to basics. And like, if it's the more processed something is, chances are it's more of an issue for you. So as Brad said, like something like an actual steak, that's just been cut from the animal's body. There's no processing going on there. Eggs, again, no processing, versus like an egg-based protein powder. Okay, there's more processing in there. A protein bar, more processing in there. Something that lasts on the shelf for a year or 2 years, that's going to be most likely not as, you know, high quality for you. So just always bring it back to that when you're starting to get confused about food. Just be like, okay, how much ingredients is added to this thing, how old is this food, like is it this new health supplement, quote unquote, then maybe you need to worry more about that than eggs or meat. Okay, like your grandparents, great grandparents, and everyone else beyond that survived on this stuff. So that's the main stuff we wanted to talk about today, guys. Anything else you wanted to chat about with
No,
that,
I wanted
Brad?
to ask, do you have something called polony in Ireland?
What is it?
Polony, but maybe you call it
No.
bologna. It's
Oh,
like a
like that's
kind
a load
of,
of baloney. Is it in
yeah,
America?
but it's actually in South Africa. There's something called polony, which is like a kind of
Never heard of it.
very cheap or affordable kind of
Like a salami, is it?
cylindrical pink processed out of, I guess, like a whole bunch of offal and various things that source origin unknown.
Yeah.
And it becomes in this very thick, condensed, cylindrical pink meat that you slice and pop on a sandwich.
Sounds nice.
It's it used to be a
There's
staple
actually
as a child.
in Thailand,
So
there was these like, because in Thailand, like Thai food is amazing, but when they try and do Western food, it's just not good. It's like, again, it's like an Irish person trying to open up a Thai restaurant. It's going to be bad. And they had these like, like I think from sausages, like Ireland does sausages really well, UK does sausages really well, Italians do sausages really well. Um, but in Thailand, they had these pink sausages, and it looked like the most processed gunk ever. They would always have them in the open markets, and they would have like amazing Thai street food, and then this absolutely gross sausage. But because it was kind of, novel and Western, like a lot of the locals would be going and eating the sausages instead of their delicious local food. Like I always thought it was really funny. So yeah, just a bit of a side note there.
well, I came across this. We're actually talking about Thai food the other day, and I was saying how when I was in Thailand, I actually got fat because I couldn't stop eating. It was
So good, man. I
so
love it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got these vegan sausages here made from seitan, the gluten protein.
Yeah.
That's actually a great source of protein for people that don't want to eat too much animal products. So seitan is like a huge like local high protein option, and it can be quite tasty depending on how it's made. So seitan
Would you say
sausage.
is it a bit evil, that type of protein?
Yeah, it's very, yeah, if you're a
Oh.
religious person, you try to avoid it, those seitan sausages. But
Uh,
they also look so grotesque that they look actually, and I'm sorry to be vulgar, but they look like kind of long solid turds, and it's
yeah.
very unpleasant to try and serve that at a gathering. Put that on
I
the
just
bar.
think as well, if you're not going to eat meat, like, then don't like. I don't see why you would eat a burger that's not a burger. Just eat a vegetable instead, if that's your decision.
Mushroom burger.
I don't get it. Yeah, mate, we need to jump off because we've got another call. But
Okay.
as always, we shared about 3 minutes of value there, and then we just talked absolute arse. So great to check in. And yeah, if you have any questions, guys, just put them in the chat below if you're on Facebook. And yeah, just send us any messages through the links if you are listening on Apple or Spotify. Awesome, mate. We'll chat to you early next week. All right.
All right. Take care.
See you, man. Bye bye.